Daniel and Marissa Holloway looked like the perfect couple until the day he picked up their daughter for a routine visit and never brought her back. What followed was a chilling descent into darkness, a father's twisted plan to punish his wife in the most unthinkable way, by taking the life of their only child. In a quiet town that trusted him, Daniel orchestrated a calculated act of revenge that stunned everyone and shattered the illusion of safety forever. Daniel Holloway was the kind of man people trusted without question. He wore pressed shirts, spoke politely, and never raised his voice in public. In the small, sleepy town of Maple Hollow, where everyone knew everyone, Daniel stood out as a respectable science teacher at the local high school. Parents felt comfortable leaving their children in his classroom. His students called him Mr. H, and many admired his calm demeanor and clever way of making boring lessons fun. At school events, he was always present, smiling, helping, appearing every bit the devoted educator and family man. His wife, Marissa, added to the illusion. She was warm and approachable, the owner of a small bakery downtown where the smell of fresh bread and cinnamon buns drew people in from blocks away. Her days were filled with laughter, friendly customers, and flour-dusted aprons. Together, she and Daniel had a daughter, Lila, a 9-year-old girl who brought joy everywhere she went. She was the kind of child people remembered: bright eyes, pigtails, and a habit of skipping instead of walking. The family was admired from afar, often described as picture perfect. But what most people didn't see was what happened behind the closed doors of their modest white house on Willow Lane. While Daniel was composed in public, at home, he was distant and cold. He insisted on silence during meals, frowned at laughter, and controlled every detail of the household: how much money Marissa could spend, which shows Lila could watch, even what music was allowed to play in the car. It was never physical. There were no bruises or visible signs of abuse. But the emotional grip he held over Marissa was powerful. He was a master of quiet punishment, long stretches of silence, passive-aggressive remarks, and dismissive glares that left Marissa feeling like a prisoner in her own home. Marissa kept up appearances for Lila's sake. She smiled through community bake sales, hosted birthday parties, and continued posting cheerful pictures online. No one suspected that she often cried herself to sleep. Lila, too young to fully understand, just knew her dad was strict and that her mom seemed tired all the time. She began to seek comfort in small things: drawing with chalk outside, hugging her favorite stuffed rabbit, and spending extra time at the bakery, where things felt lighter and warmer. Over time, Marissa started to consider leaving. The idea scared her, but the thought of raising Lila in a home filled with tension and control frightened her more. She quietly met with a divorce lawyer in a nearby town. She began saving money in a secret account. She didn't tell Daniel. She didn't dare. But something inside her had shifted, an invisible line had been crossed. She wanted freedom. She wanted peace. She wanted to breathe again. None of her neighbors knew. None of her friends suspected. To the outside world, the Holloways were still the golden family of Maple Hollow. But deep within the walls of their home, the foundation had already started to crack. And soon, everything would come crashing down. The morning Marissa filed for divorce, the sky was overcast and the streets of Maple Hollow were unusually quiet. She stood outside the courthouse for several minutes before going in, gripping a folder filled with documents her lawyer had helped her prepare. Her hands trembled, not from fear of the legal process, but from what she knew would come after. Daniel would not take this lightly. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, gathering financial records, printing text messages, and documenting his cold, calculated behavior. It wasn't about proving abuse in a way others could see. It was about proving the life she was living was no longer safe, not for her, and not for Lila. When Daniel was served the papers 2 days later, he didn't shout. He didn't break things. Instead, he stood in the kitchen, reading the documents in silence while Marissa watched from the hallway. He looked up once, expressionless, and simply walked past her. From that moment, something in him changed. It was as if he had stopped being human, his eyes lost warmth, his face lost expression. He didn't argue. He didn't plead. He began retreating into himself, only now he was more careful, more precise. He began tracking Marissa's schedule, monitoring her movements, and speaking to her only in cold, measured tones. Soon after, Daniel lost his teaching job. Though it wasn't made public, word spread quickly. Parents had raised concerns over messages he had sent to female students. Nothing was ever confirmed, just whispers, suggestions, but in a small town, that was enough. Daniel claimed the school was trying to ruin him. He blamed Marissa for distracting him, for creating stress that made him slip up. He said she was taking everything from him, his family, his career, his reputation. She was ruining him, and she would regret it. Marissa moved out a month later, taking Lila with her. The court had granted her temporary custody, with Daniel allowed only supervised visits every other weekend. She rented a small apartment near the bakery, and for the first time in years, she could breathe. Lila seemed happier, too. She giggled more, sang in the bath again, and started drawing colorful pictures that didn't have storm clouds in the corner. Marissa tried not to cry when she noticed those details. She told herself they were healing, that it would only get better from here, but Daniel wasn't healing. He was watching. He showed up at the bakery and sat in his car across the street for hours. He began sending strange, emotionless emails about custody rights and parenting schedules, quoting legal codes and court decisions. His tone was cold and professional, like he was filing a report, not writing to the woman he once loved. Marissa forwarded everything to a lawyer, but Daniel had not made any direct threats. He hadn't broken any laws. He was just present. Always watching. Always near. And deep down, she knew something wasn't right. Something was building inside him. And she was running out of time. The weekend started like any other. Marissa packed Lila's overnight bag with her favorite pajamas, a toothbrush, and a worn-out storybook she insisted on reading every night. Daniel was scheduled for a supervised visit, but due to a court-approved adjustment, this one would be unsupervised for the first time. He had completed a parenting class, shown good behavior, and the court believed he deserved a chance to rebuild trust. Marissa was hesitant, but she wanted to believe that maybe, for Lila's sake, Daniel could be civil. Lila, excited to spend time with her dad, hugged her mother tightly before skipping off to the car. Daniel waved from the driver's seat. His smile looked forced, but calm. Marissa stood on the sidewalk longer than usual after they drove away. Her chest tight with unease. By evening, Marissa sent a check-in message. No reply. Hours passed. She told herself not to panic. Maybe they were watching a movie, maybe Daniel had forgotten to charge his phone. She waited until 9 p.m. before calling again. Then again at 10. Still nothing. By midnight, her hands were shaking. She drove to Daniel's apartment and knocked on the door. No answer. She called the police. Officers arrived quickly and performed a welfare check. The apartment was empty. Lights off, doors locked, no signs of disturbance. Lila's bag wasn't there, nor were her ballet shoes, which were usually left in the hallway. Daniel's car was also missing. The responding officer treated it as a possible misunderstanding at first. Maybe Daniel had taken Lila for an overnight trip. But Marissa knew something was wrong. She tried to explain that Daniel wasn't the type to act spontaneously, especially with Lila. And he would never ignore her calls unless he was trying to send a message. By morning, panic had set in. A missing persons report was filed. Lila's photo was shared with local news stations and an Amber Alert was issued across the state. Surveillance footage showed Daniel picking Lila up from ballet class that afternoon. Everything appeared normal. She was smiling. She got into his car willingly. Then they vanished. Police searched Daniel's bank records, phone activity, and email. Everything stopped that evening. No texts, no purchases, no GPS data. It was as if he had gone off the grid. Detectives visited his old classroom, spoke with colleagues, searched his online accounts. They found a troubling pattern: recent searches about lethal medications, remote cabin locations, and parental revenge cases. It was no longer a case of a custody violation. It was something darker. Marissa could barely function. She refused to leave the station, sleeping in the waiting area, begging officers for updates. The media caught wind of the story and reporters gathered outside her bakery and apartment. Her life, once peaceful and predictable, had become a nightmare. Days passed. No signs. No clues. No phone calls. And then, on the third morning, Daniel walked into the police station alone, calm and silent, holding a piece of paper that would bring everything to a tragic end. Daniel stepped into the police station wearing the same clothes he had on the day. He'd picked Lila up. His shirt was wrinkled, his face pale, but his posture was upright and steady. Officers at the front desk didn't immediately recognize him until he placed a folded piece of paper on the counter and said, in a flat voice, "She's not suffering anymore." His eyes didn't show panic or sadness, just a disturbing emptiness. Within seconds, the station burst into motion. The note contained handwritten directions to a remote cabin deep in the woods outside town, along with a short message: "She's at peace now. I've done what I needed to do." Police and emergency. Responders raced to the location. The cabin, old and barely standing, was one Daniel had inherited from his father, forgotten by most, tucked behind trees down a dirt road. Inside, they found silence. Dust-covered furniture, shattered windows, and in one corner, a small cot. With a pink blanket neatly wrapped around a small, still body. Lila lay peacefully, as if asleep, her hands folded over her chest, her stuffed rabbit resting beside her. There were no bruises, no signs of trauma. Next to her lay a bottle of prescription medication, empty, and a juice box with traces of the drug mixed inside. Daniel had waited until she fell asleep before watching her slip away. Marissa was called to the station and informed of the discovery. Her screams echoed down the hallway. She collapsed, unable to stand, her cries turning into gasps for air. Detectives who had worked decades on violent crimes said they had never seen a mother break the way Marissa did in that moment. It wasn't just grief, it was destruction. During questioning, Daniel spoke with chilling calmness. He admitted to planning everything for weeks. He said he chose the method to ensure Lila felt no pain. He called it a peaceful exit. But when asked why, his explanation stunned even the most hardened investigators. He said it wasn't about Lila. It was about Marissa. He wanted her to understand what it felt like to lose everything. He believed she had taken his career, his family, his identity. In his twisted view, Lila had become a symbol, his final leverage, the one thing that would make Marissa hurt as deeply as he claimed to hurt. He showed no regret. When pressed about Lila's innocence, he simply said, "She was better off. She won't be caught between us anymore." No apology. No emotion. Just cold logic delivered through a flat tone and empty gaze. Forensic analysis confirmed everything. The drugs were traced to a prescription Daniel had stolen from a relative. The cabin showed no signs of a struggle. Lila had no idea what was happening. She trusted her father completely, and that trust had been her undoing. The community that once admired Daniel as a dedicated teacher and father now struggled to even speak his name. The man they thought they knew had vanished long ago, replaced by someone capable of unimaginable cruelty masked behind a calm smile. The trial began 6 months later, but the outcome was never in question. Daniel Holloway was charged with first-degree Murder and faced overwhelming evidence, his confession, the note with directions, surveillance footage, and the toxicology report that confirmed the overdose. The courtroom was packed every day. Neighbors, former students, and complete strangers filled the benches, all trying to make sense of what had happened. Everyone remembered the man he used to be, or at least the man he pretended to be. Now, they saw a hollow shell, sitting motionless behind the defense table, showing no emotion as photos of Lila were shown on a projector screen, her pink shoes placed gently beside her body. Marissa sat in the front row, flanked by officers and family members, her hands clenched together in her lap. She did not cry. Not anymore. Her grief had dried into something quieter, something colder. Her presence was the only reminder that a real person had been destroyed, not just Lila, but a mother who had trusted the system, who had tried to follow the rules, and who had lost everything because of it. When she gave her victim impact statement, the courtroom fell silent. She spoke softly, clearly, every word cutting through the silence like glass. She didn't talk about Daniel. She talked about Lila, the way she danced around the kitchen, the way she always slept hugging her stuffed rabbit, and the way she never got to see her 10th birthday. She ended her statement with a single sentence: "He didn't just kill my daughter. He killed everything that was good in my world." Daniel was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He blinked once as the judge read the sentence, then looked down at the table in front of him. He said nothing. He offered no apology. He didn't even glance at Marissa. When the courtroom entered, he was led away in cuffs, his face blank as always. The man who once taught chemistry with a kind smile and tucked his daughter into bed at night had become a monster too calm to scream. After the trial, Marissa left Maple Hollow. She sold the bakery, packed her things, and disappeared. Some said she moved to another state, others believed she checked herself into a mental health facility. No one knew for sure. Her apartment stood empty for months before a for rent sign finally went up. The town moved on in surface ways, new teachers were hired, the bakery space reopened under new owners, and the seasons changed as they always did. But a deep scar remained. Every year, on the anniversary of Lila's death, someone leaves a small bouquet of white lilies on the front step of the old Holloway home. No one knows who it is. Some believe it's Marissa, returning in secret. Others say it's a neighbor who can't forget. But everyone remembers. And everyone knows that behind even the most perfect smile, darkness can hide, quiet, patient, and waiting for the moment to strike.